first questions from BD underscore is asking, Unity Xnopyt? Yes.
Everything.
Unity causes to disintegrate.
All
There's
parts of Unity.
It's actually like a little bit of like a follow, because like, one of the things, there's like a number of things, but like people sometimes ask us like, oh, Unity is introducing this is going to resolve this issue. Would you consider just staying with Unity and upgrading to a newer version? Problem for us, there's so many issues with Unity. There's like a bunch of technical ones, but even if the technical ones were resolved, the big issue we have is they're not really trustworthy for us as developers, because they've done a number of weird kind of practices and sort of U-turns. The most like recent one, being the fact that they wanted all developers to pay per install of their game, and that change was retroactive. Meaning, if you there were a number of developers who had published games, and they developed them, assuming certain kind of licensing with Unity. And then Unity goes like, no, you're gonna owe us this amount of money. And the developers were like, there were some developers who would literally owe more than they actually earned through their game. Like, they would pretty much ruin the businesses, and Unity just introduced that. But what's even worse is, years before that, they made some changes where they were like, trying to retroactively change their licensing agreements. You already, licensed the engine, you released the game, and they wanted to introduce ability to be like, well, even though you agreed, to certain version of our terms of service, we can change that version retroactively. So, even if you're not doing any new development, now you have now you have to conform to this new agreement that wasn't in place, at the time of when you made your thing. And there was a big outrage because of that. And because of that, they were like, okay, we're going to be more transparent. We're going to, we're going to revert that, and we're going to put our policy changes on GitHub so we can, everybody can see when and how they change. And we're going to be, all nice and transparent. And then, they quietly removed that, and then they quietly reintroduced the ability to retroactively change the terms of service, and then they retroactively changed it. Meaning, their word, from my perspective as a developer, their word is essentially meaningless. They're just gonna, right now I feel like even though they went back on, the predatory kind of changes for the fees, I'm kind of expecting them to do it again, just slower and quieter so people don't notice, because they've already done that in the past. And it's not even the first thing they did. There was another change, I remember, that, fortunately didn't affect us, but where they essentially said, if you're running any Unity-based server software, you can only host it on Unity Cloud. You cannot use Azure, you cannot use Google Cloud, you have to use our services. And for us, we kind of skirted it because, our headless, it actually has 0 Unity bits in it. But even then, it's kind of, it's not the kind of change that, you want them to pull on you. And that just, it hurts a lot of trust in the brand. And essentially for us, trust in them is below 0. And that's one of the reasons. Even if it was technically perfect, we would probably still be wanting to move away, because we don't know when is the next thing they're gonna come. We've already dealt with some things, because they another things they introduced. They were they had these programs where you have Unity Plus, you have Unity Pro. Unity Plus is much cheaper. Unity Pro has a bunch of things, but we don't need any of those things. But Unity was we're gonna streamline Unity offerings, and we're gonna remove Unity Plus. Everybody has to go on Unity Pro, which is 10 times more expensive. And to me, that feels they know their developers are fleeing away from them because of their practice. So they're doing what they can to squeeze as much money out of the people that they still have, because you gotta see some companies will end up doing through this kind of cycle where things get worse, people will flee, and they will clamp down on people who they know they cannot switch super quick, because if you're a game studio, you say a few years into developing a project, say to Unity, and suddenly something like this happens, you're not able to switch just on a whim. It takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, sometimes resources you might not have, to switch away from the engine. And they know that. So they know they can do this kind of move and force those developers to pay more, even though the developers aren't getting any benefit from it, but they want to squeeze out our money. And right now, to me, it feels like Unity is going through that stage where the people who originally built the company, who made the software, and who made a really cool engine that came with really cool things, it changed the industry a lot. But now, the company is being controlled by people who don't have that same kind of relation to the product. It's controlled by people who are more focused on just maximizing profits. And by maximizing profits, they actually make it the product worse, which makes people leave. So they end up making decisions that make things even more worse, to squeeze as much money as they can, because they don't care long term. They care they're gonna stay with the company for a few years and then move on to another one. So they don't care what happens after that, as long as the numbers look good during that period. So to me it feels like Unity's kind of going through the process right now, and we just want to leave, even if all the technical issues were not there. But there's still lots of technical issues, and we could talk about this for a while. But it's this kind of behavior alone that is just making us we need something where we know we're not gonna have something like this pulled over us out of the blue, that's gonna put us in a very problematic situation. So the United does make us Xnopyt, makes us disintegrate.
Yeah. I won't harp on that topic for too long, but man, their API is not good. There's just so many little bugs and gotchas everywhere.
That's the other thing. I don't want to go onto the technical bits of it. Very much my thing is one thing I want people to understand. Even if the technically was perfect, the practices of the company alone are enough to make us still want to move, because we don't kind of trust what is going to happen.